Hello and welcome to Gardening on the Edge, or more specifically, gardening in South Africa. So, what we have here is the Bestech Strelit. And best I can see, it has been named after the Strelitzia, the plant or the flower, also known as the bird of paradise, which makes this knife very close to my heart because the Strelitzia is native to South Africa. In fact, I've got 2 Strelitzia plants in my garden, and they're actually flowering right now. So this is an Ostap Hel designed knife. I've had a few Ostap Hel designed knives on the edge, and I'm always excited when I get one in my hand because Ostap Hel's designs always contain these little hidden treasures, these little gems. The more you look at the design of the knife, the more you see these brilliant little design touches, and this knife no different. In fact, this may be even more so than ever. Right, guys, so now I'm going to be doing the usual materials, dimensions, and weight, and then dive into design and attributes of this very well made and beautifully designed little knife. So let's get cracking. Materials: we've got a Damascus steel blade. Handle is titanium, the clip is titanium. The screws, best I can tell, are stainless steel, putting a magnet to those. And the pivot assembly is makes use of a ceramic ball bearing. Right, let's go through dimensions and weight, and this is going to be interesting. So we have a blade length of 55.7 millimeters, and that's 2.19 inches. Blade thickness is 3.6 millimeters, and that's 0.14 inches. Handle thickness is 11.6 millimeters, and that's 0.45 inches. Closed length of the knife is 77 millimeters, and that's 3.03 inches. Then overall length of the knife, and this is where it does become a little interesting. So if we look at that measurement there, then the length is 88 millimeters or 3.46 inches. But if we measure from the back of the handle to the tip of the blade there, and that is the longest distance, the longest measurement of the knife in its open position, then we have 92 millimeters, and that's 3.62 inches. Right, so let's look at weight of this diminutive little knife. Get the scale on there. Don't expect this to be weighing too much. Let's get that cranked up and let's see what we're on. So we're on ounces. What do we have? 1.8 ounces. Yeah, so as expected, that is a light knife. Let's get that onto grams, and we have, let it settle, 52 grams. Yeah, so as I said, to be expected for a knife that is so small and makes use of titanium. Let's get that open and start looking at this design. So, as I mentioned, the name the Strelitzia, Strelit, comes from Strelitzia, and the knife in its open position, you can see that in the design of the knife. If you're familiar with the Strelitzia flower, it has that sort of shape to it, whether you hold it like that or like that. I'm not sure which works better, but it does have that sort of shape of the Strelitzia flower. And the Strelitzia, by the way, the plant is part of the banana family of plants, trees. And if you look at this knife in its closed position, well, what does that handle look like? Yeah, kind of like a banana. So that is as well. So, right, let's start off by looking at the blade as I normally do. So, we clearly have a hawk's bill or hawk bill style knife. I've seen it described as both. Flat grind, and the edge on this knife, by the way, out of the box, incredibly tidy edge on this knife. In fact, everything on this knife incredibly tidy and well made, but also exceptionally sharp out of the box as well. And just behind that edge, we've got a little sharpening choil, which will assist a little bit in keeping that edge tidy, although you do have that little bit of curve to contend with as well. And here immediately we start getting into those little design touches that Ostap puts into his knives. So we look at that plunge line that stretches up from that sharpening choil, and where that plunge line meets that finger choil, and you can see another finger choil there, and I'll speak a little bit more about those two in a second, but where that plunge line meets that sharpening choil, it also meets the swedge that runs all the way down to the tip of the blade. But that's the meeting point for the spine of the blade, the spine of that swedge, and the bottom line of that swedge, so where the grind starts. They meet at that point. So swedge, choil, plunge line meet and cross at that point. And it's just this little shape that it forms there is just, it's gorgeous. It is absolutely beautiful. Switch that around, and that obviously the same on both sides. Looking at those finger choils, we've got this beautiful beveled edge running on the inside of those choils, and that beveled edge runs up to the back of the knife. And I guess, is that the tang of the blade? I guess not really sure how to describe it on this knife, but where those two jimped portions are, that beveling continues onto that portion, and then we've got that same beveling on that other finger choil, that inside finger choil, if I can call it that. And the finish on that is also just gorgeous and absolutely perfect. And as I mentioned, the fit and finish on this knife is beautifully done. It really is. The attention to detail from a production perspective as well as a design perspective are really absolutely great on this knife. Right, let's get this. I think I've covered off everything on the blade for now. Let's get the knife into its closed position and look a little bit more at that design and the shapes that are formed. And the whole look of the knife, you've got these sort of swooping lines that travel all over the knife. It gives it this sort of very integrated and swooping smooth look, and that includes that choil in its closed position, the spine of the blade and the spine of the handle. And if you look at that shape that's formed there, we've got this symmetrical shape happening there that is very smooth and flowing. And I just want to flip the knife around and speak about something that's going on the lock side. So we've got this cut into the lock, and that's obviously where you get that little relief cut to allow the flex in that lock. But if we look at the general shape that's being formed there, and I'm going to open the blade just slightly to show you what's happening here. So there's the plunge line that is on the blade, but as I close that blade, you see how that plunge line lines up with that cut on the lock, and then the cut on either side of the lock with that plunge line forms sort of a cup shape. And if you flip the knife around and you look at that, and you can see it's that same kind of shape that's happening again. It's those little design touches, that extra attention to detail that Ostap brings to his knife designs that is just gorgeous. And I'm going to be using a lot of those adjectives as I go through the knife. I'm trying to remain objective, but I will be using a lot of those adjectives: beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, magnificent, because all of those words, all of those descriptive words are apt. They are appropriate for this gorgeous little knife that is actually a little piece of art as well as it being a tool. Right, let's get back to that handle design and see this beautiful milling that's done on the handle, and that's sort of a hollow milling, so you get that kind of concave shape. And as the light catches that, you can see how that plays with those shapes and accentuates those swooping lines of the knife. So we've got that on that side of the handle, but also running along the spine, just a thinner milled area, but also that sort of hollow milled shape. And flipping the knife around onto the other side, onto the lock side, we've got the same thing going on here. So there again, that hollow milled shape on the spine of the blade, but that even carries on onto the lock. So there as well, that hollow milling that is happening there. And again, just how the light plays on that, you get those little shadows to accentuate the shape, is beautifully considered and beautifully produced. Right, let's look at the pivot caps. So the pivot caps, by the way, the finish on this handle is a stonewash black. And on top of that, if you get the knife close, and I hope I can get this to focus, but all along that handle, we've got a little lines that are kind of ground into the handle that adds even more interest to that stonewash finish. And that carries on onto those mold areas of the handle as well. In fact, that also carries onto the pocket clip that I'll speak about in a second. Right, so getting back to those pivot caps, the pivot cap also finished in that stonewash black, and that raised just a little bit off the surface of the handle. But then you can see how that is framed with that stainless steel circle running around the outside of the pivot cap. That just gives you that extra little bit of sparkle, that little bit of pop of stainless steel. And that especially looks good on this black handle. That then happens on both sides, and on this side you can see that that pivot cap is a torque screw. It is torque screws all over this knife, if I haven't mentioned that already. Right, so what else? Let's get the knife onto that side and speak about the pocket clip. So we do have tip up carry, and it is right hand only, so not reversible. And I guess the fact that the clip is curved would have hinted at that, because if it was reversible, you would needed another pocket clip that curved the other way. You don't have that, so it is right hand only. But again, looking at the finish on that clip, so also stonewash finish, but also on that edge has that little bit of hollow milling on it, so that you get that same shape happening, and again just accentuates that swooping line of the handle. The way that that pocket clip also attaches, you can see this little circular lip around that wide rimmed screw, and then that screw countersunk into the clip. So again, just gorgeous attention to detail on that piece. The pocket clip is one of those pen style clips. You can see that from the side, decent amount of space in there, and it is milled titanium, but it is very springy, so easy enough to get that over cloth. I just want to look at this little piece of design as well, just above the clip. And you can see here we have these little intersecting lines, so created by that milled area on the handle, and then also the spine of the handle, and then we've got a little ridge running in above the clip from that side, and then from the tip or the back tip of the handle as well. And where those lines intersect, you can see that another little creates a little cross there that plays beautifully with the light. And again, it is just that exceptional attention to detail that Ostap puts into his knife designs. It is so pleasing when you look around a knife and then you pick up these little things that, you sort of see nothing has been left to chance on this knife. And even those little areas have been carefully considered and carefully designed. Absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah, stunning knife. So you can clearly see what I feel about the knife so far. Right. What else? So the lock, you can see the little torque screw there. So it does have the little stainless steel insert and the over travel stop. And then you obviously have the stainless steel on stainless steel lockup. As well, just looking at the shape, so in its closed position, that choil, that jimped area, that tang, like I say, I'm not sure if that's perhaps the tang of the blade, but you can see that sort of hammer shape that creates as well. That is also very, very interesting. Right, get the knife open, and I want to speak about action and deployment of the blade in a second. But again, that beautiful design that continues when you look at the knife in its open position. And I've spoken about the fact already that it looks sort of like that Strelit flower that the knife seems to be named after. But here again, we've got those little swooping lines, a little curve there, and then that curve that runs seamlessly onto the handle. And that kind of, to me, looks like a wave, an ocean wave, that shape that's created there. And then flip the knife that way around, and you've got the spine of the handle that beautifully integrates with that tang or jimped area at the back of the handle there, also seamlessly integrating into the knife. So whether it's in its open or closed position, you can just see how carefully considered this knife, the design of this knife has been. And then you may have seen other pictures and reviews of this knife, and when you see it in its open position, it starts clearly hinting at what this knife has been designed for. And I'm going to get that into my hand now. So this has been designed as a push knife or push dagger, whichever description you want to use. So it has been designed as a self-defense tool and beautifully designed for that. The ergos of this knife, you get that into your hand, it is incredibly comfortable, no hot spots, and well designed for its purpose. So this is one of those items where sort of engineering meets art. It is beautifully engineered, it works well. In my opinion, it is fit for purpose, but it is also this piece of art. Absolutely gorgeously designed knife. And I'm going to stop here for a second. I've seen a few other reviews, and I try not watch other reviews before I review a knife so that it doesn't influence me. But I happen to unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. I happen to watch a few other reviews, and I've seen some people speak about the knife, and they say, yeah, they don't get it, and it's not for them. And I can understand not all knives will be for you. But they sort of get a little bit critical about the knife and say, yeah, it's, you can't use it for multiple functions, and it can only be used for one thing, and therefore they become a little bit sort of critical of the knife design. And I get a little bit irritated by that, because that is just clearly missing the entire point of the design. It's kind of like saying, I don't like a Porsche because there's nowhere to attach the plow, and therefore I can't plow my lands. A Porsche has been designed for a specific reason. It is a sports car or a supercar, depending on which Porsche you're looking for. It is not a farm tool. And looking and reviewing a knife like this in that way, comparing it to an EDC that can do everything, is just, as I say, it is completely missing the point. Now, I love it when things like this exist. I love it when designers try something different and unique, and it is good engineering, and it does work for its intended purpose, and at the same time it is beautifully made, beautifully designed, and beautifully considered. I really do love this, that things like this exist. It's the same reason I like something like a Medford Marauder, this massive knife that is probably not practical to carry, but it is just great that exists, and it's the sort of knife you do want in your collection. And on the other extreme end of the spectrum, things like the also Ostap Hel design, the little Kiwi, a tiny little knife. I'm glad that exists as well. And things like the CRKT Provoke, that we have things that are completely different from the norm, and to try and review those and compare them to very practical knives. And I do like the practical type knives. There we go. There's an example of one. The Spyderco PM3, a knife that kind of does it all, and I do like those knives, and I'm glad these exist as well. But equally, I'm so glad that things that are so different, that people are prepared to try something different, design something different and unique. I really am pleased that this sort of thing exists, and I'm very tempted by it to add it to the collection because it is so different. A folding push dagger. I don't know if another one exists. I only know of this one. And on top of it, like I say, and I'm going to go on and on about this, the beautiful design and engineering that's gone into this. Now, I've also seen people speak about the fact or comment on the fact that it's too small to be an effective self-defense weapon and blah, blah, blah. Well, I tell you what, I put this in my hand, and I wouldn't like to be punched with this. I think this is going to hurt a damn sight more than being punched with a bare fist. So there we go. I think it is an effective little self-defense tool that you can kind of put in everywhere, or anywhere, I should say, not everywhere. Right. Have I missed anything off while I'm going on and preaching? I have. So let's just look at those standoffs. And again, this hasn't escaped the designer's touch. So a little standoff in the back done in the stainless steel color, and that also just works beautifully. So especially on this black, as you turn it, you get that little flash of stainless steel that really does look good. And then that's also been shaped. So the main standoff, that sort of pulley shape to it, and then you've got that extra, what looks like a little extra standoff, and that also has a nice shape to it, and that is your lanyard attachment. So again, just beautifully considered. While I'm looking at that, let's see if I can do it like this. You should be able to see inside there, so you can see inside that frame that we have some titanium milled away there, and that obviously to save a little bit of weight on the knife too. Right, now let's get into deployment. And to say that deployment and action on this knife is the best part will be doing an injustice to the rest of the knife, but it does just add an even extra bit of pleasure to this beautiful design. So we spoke a little bit about that jimped area at the back, and you can clearly see in the knife in its closed position that sort of looks like a very traditional flipper tab, and it is. So get hold of the knife like that, get hold of the knife like that, and it flips in the traditional way, but it is incredibly snappy, and that blade gets open very quickly. And that's because the blade only has to travel 45 degrees until it gets into its fully opened position, as opposed to any standard knife that would need to move through the full 180 degrees. So that just adds to that feeling of snappiness on the knife. So you can open it like I've just showed you, or you can get the knife in your hand kind of like that and do the cigarette lighter type open, and that also works exceptionally well. Or you can get the knife in your hand like that and get your thumb into that finger choil there and flip it out like that, and that is also intoxicating. So on top of everything, this knife really is a little bit of a fidget toy. Well, a lot of a fidget toy. It is a fidgeter's delight, this knife. And then if you really want to, you can kind of get the knife in your hand like that and get your middle finger in there, and you can do the little middle finger flip or spidey flick, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, on top of everything, on top of the gorgeous design, gorgeous engineering, it is an absolute fidget toy supreme, this as well. And something I said I was going to speak about earlier on is just those two choils. So you can see that, and that obviously for the practical reason of getting hold of the knife, but you can see how that the circumference of those seems to be identical, so you get that little bit of symmetrical shape going there as well. So yeah, just all over from every angle. This is just a beautifully considered, beautifully designed, and then on top of that, beautifully manufactured knife. So kudos needs to go to both Ostap Hel for his design and a little bit of genius on this, but also to Bestech for the way they've actually produced this knife, manufactured it. Beautiful, beautiful piece. So speaking about the way that the knife deploys, if you picture this knife in your pocket, so if somebody was facing me and this was in their right pocket, so this would be the rim of the pocket, so pull that out of your pocket, and then that little area there also, if you pull it up against the side of your pocket, that hooks, and as you're pulling it out of your pocket, that also deploys the knife. So that also considered, and that also works very, very well. Right, guys, I think I have covered off pretty much everything that I wanted to, but it is a sort of knife that I could probably carry on for about an hour speaking about this knife. So, let's stop here and speak about some of the options that you can get, the other versions of this knife that you can get. So there are a number, well, there's 3 different blade steels you can get, and within each you get a number of variations of finishes as well. So this, obviously the Damascus version of the blade, and that you get then in 4 different finishes on the handle. So there's the black stonewash, then you get one with a bronze stonewash that I really would like to get in my hands, because as you might know if you've watched any of my other reviews, I really do like that sort of bronze finish, and in pictures that bronze stonewash does look good. Then you also get it in a blue stonewash and then a titanium stonewash. Then you get a version that has an S35 VN blade, and in that case we have 2-tone blade finishes on that S35. So you get one version that is stonewash and satin, so that ricasso area and the tang that is in the stonewash, and then the main grind is the satin finish, and that has a black stonewash handle. Then there's one with a 2-tone blade, so the ricasso and tang is in black, and then the main grind is in satin, and that has a bronze stonewash handle, and then there's an all black stonewash version. So that's the S35 versions of the knife. And then you get one with an M390 blade, and there you get a few variations as well, but they all have a carbon fiber inlay in the titanium handle. For me, though, this Damascus blade really works well, and it does work well in this black and this Damascus sort of combination. But, you know, putting the knife down like that, it kind of looks to me like a knife that Batman would carry. It just has a little bit of that bat device look about it, and that just makes it even more appealing to me. There that is. Right, guys, before I forget, let me just lay the knife down there and give my my appreciation. So again, another knife that has been supplied by Blades and Triggers. I really do appreciate their ongoing support of the channel. So check this and other interesting Bestech and other brands of knives and other tactical goodies out on their website, BNT Online, or in any one of their stores. Right, so what does that really leave me to do? I suppose size comparisons, and this is probably going to be a little bit weird as well. And I brought just to start off, not really that it's a size comparison, but it's just because it's another unusual and well-engineered knife. But this, the CRKT Provoke, so in this case a folding karambit, while that is a folding push knife. But just to give you a sense of what those two look like together, so two oddities maybe, but beautiful oddities. See what those look like together, and then let's get those in their closed positions and kind of see what those two look like together when they are closed. Right, so what's the best way to do it? Like that, I suppose. There we go. So there's those two. See what they look like. Right, and then I will use the knives that I usually use, and let's get this back into its open position like that. And then I'll bring on the other knife that I used just now, and this is the Spyderco PM3, the smaller version. Give you a little bit of a sense of scale there. Maybe best to put it like that and like that, to give you a sense of that. Right, and then this knife that I always use, and I have to say it, I use it because it has been out for so long, and if you like knives, you should be familiar with that knife, and that is the Benchmade Mini Barrage. So give you a little bit of sense of scale there too, like that and like that again. There we go. And then the last one I'm going to use is the other Spyderco, and that is the Manix 2. Lay them down like that. There we go. Kind of get those two choils lined up. It looks quite interesting. So again, just to give you a little bit of scale there, like that again, and there we go. Right, guys, and I think that is now pretty much it. I think that I've covered off everything that I wanted to on this knife. As I mentioned earlier, it is a knife that I can carry on for an hour speaking about this knife, because it is one of those knives that the more you look at it, the more you play with it, the more you see, and for me, the more I appreciate it. And I am really tempted by this knife because it is so unusual and because it is beautifully engineered. And I'm repeating myself, but and beautifully designed. I really do think this is a little bit of design genius. And again, Ostap's attention to detail on his knives is just absolutely superb. Guys, and I think that is just about it. Covered off everything, like I say, that I probably wanted to, and then some. So all that's really left for me to do is to give my appreciation to you. I really do appreciate it when you join me, when you share some of your time with me, and would equally appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and the bell icon so that you can be notified every time I release a new video, because I really would love you to join me more often. And if you did enjoy this waffle video, I really would appreciate a thumbs up. It does help with the a like, that is, it does help with the algorithms. And other than that, you go well and God bless.